Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. And Tom, we thought we would just do one show this week, but that turned out to be a lie. This is a second show featuring listener questions that we solicited this week because, there's only one immediate availability, so we thought, why should we have to come up with stuff to talk about? Let's let other people do it for us, as like we do every other week when it's the Buckeyes or the coaches. And so we've got a bunch of questions. We will not get to all of them this time. We're on a time clock here, but we will eventually get to, I think, all of them eventually at some point, whether we tack them on at the end of other shows or we do something to get them done. But so this is a listener question show. This is for you guys. It's not for us. It's never about us. Tom, how are you doing?
Wonderfully. I'm just excited that we have continued our streak of never once doing a one-time weekly show since we changed the name to the Buckeye Weekly. It's like we changed it to Buckeye Weekly and immediately started doing multiple podcasts every week. So.
Yes, maybe we should go WEAKLY.
Might be a little too on the nose. First question from the single greatest name in the history of the Ozone message board, Pants McPants. How would you grade the defensive line players aside from Chase Young at this point? Any surprises, good or bad?
Well, we talked about it on the last show that it's a surprise how well Zach Harrison is playing at this point and how advanced he is. And not that it is a surprise because we thought he was raw, but every step of the way, all we hear about is how advanced he is. But I'm still surprised to see it. He's a true freshman and he is playing like, I don't know, sophomore and a half.
Yeah. I mean, he is, we talked a little on Tuesday. He's ahead of where Tyreek Smith was this time last year. And Tyreek Smith is on a pretty good trajectory as far as his own career goes. So yeah, he's for sure. Zach Harrison is a positive. The negative side, there's kind of a negative and positive that are linked. The negative is how many guys have gotten hurt. Like, It just seems like they just have not had the full strength unit at any point this year. Teron Vincent's still out. Jonathan Cooper missed like 4 games.
Tyler
Friday, Tyreek Smith have both missed kind of a handful of games. Robert Landers had to sit out a game. I mean, it's just been this parade of injuries, which, it happens. But the good side of that is there hasn't been a drop off. Like there was one game where they had basically a starting defensive line all the way across the line out. And it was fine. Like, okay, well, just plug in the next guys who are really, really good and just keep going and keep dominating in the trenches. Like you had 4 defensive linemen who are, at least on the 2 deep, if not starters or past starters. They were all out. And it was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. No difference.
Who also surprised me is Devon Hamilton. He doesn't put up numbers every week because that's not what nose tackles do. But there are some times where he can take over a game. And Haskell Garrett the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's
played really
come out
well.
Of nowhere. Yeah.
And he was a guy where you're a junior now and you're not really, you haven't done much your first 2 years. But of course, that's going to happen when you've got Draymond Jones in front of you, but he has played well and is, progressing. I compared him to Nader Abdallah, who had a really good 5th-year senior season, and this is only Haskell Garrett's true junior season, but it was one of those guys where he turns it on late in his career, and you're like, I wish he had one more year, but he does.
Yeah.
So that's how they're different.
And you should mention Tommy Togiai too. Tommy Togiai, this is his sophomore year. You've kind of seen him flash a little bit, and it's been, the rotation is so deep there that it's hard for him to get on the field too consistently. You started to see him getting into Brian Lewerke's face a little bit against Michigan State. Like he's getting there too. It just keeps going and going and going. I mean, we haven't talked about Javonte Jean-Baptiste yet. I mean, there are literally 11 or 12 defensive linemen on this team that are like, oh, that guy's been a pleasant surprise this year. Next one from Mark. Will Ryan Day and his staff dedicate personnel to monitor and manage the portal for gaps in recruiting? I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Player personnel director Mark Pantoni is well aware of who is in the portal and who is not, and you have seen that they have used that in the past to plug certain holes. there's not going to be that many options or opportunities for them right now. I mean, they brought in Jonah Jackson this year. They brought in Gunnar Hoke this year. But there's not going to be that many options and opportunities for them because they're right at that 85 cap right now. They're going to be probably very close to that 85 number after the 2020 recruiting class comes in. But, they have certainly shown a willingness to look at that avenue if they need to plug a hole somewhere.
And it's probably an interesting question to ask him because I know he said they would assign somebody to do it. But then how do you leave a couple spots open for it? If you've got 25 spots free, do you only sign 23 or 24 guys expecting, or do you just treat that like oversigning and it'll all work itself out in the end? Because I'm sure there are areas at quarterback, for instance, where you're going to want to keep an option open because with so many quarterbacks transferring now, you're going to start seeing better and better quarterbacks out there to land. I mean, Ohio State saw it this year with Justin Fields, but this is the new normal. So you wonder if you know how Urban would like to keep one spot open for an Ohio kid, like Jalen Harris, a couple years back. I wonder if you keep one spot open for the transfer portal.
Yeah, and some of it also may be something that comes up, when someone does transfer or if they know someone is potentially looking at transferring. I mean, you have people who've, will kind of let them know that they're not sure if they're, what their future is here. Then you're potentially keeping, you have some plan Bs in your desk drawer and kind of keeping an eye on them. And I mean, this is one of those, the numbers always work out things, but that's not something that I would expect them to, bring in 4 or 5 kids in a year. But, if there's like a Jonah Jackson spot where it's like, they really need one more good veteran inside offensive lineman, here's a guy who fits that perfectly. They'll plug those holes if they need them.
Is it like a give a penny, take a penny? Like if you get one from the portal, leave one in the portal, that sort of thing?
Yeah, sort of. Something like that. They pulled a quarter out of that dish with Justin Fields and at least a dime or two with Jonah Jackson this year. So I would say they're probably coming out ahead in the transfer portal.
I mean, they did leave a penny in there for Miami.
Oh,
sorry,
ruthless,
I know,
ruthless.
Terrible. I've forsaken ourselves.
Next one from LOSU1 as Gerd blasphemes himself. Chug or Hoke? I think Hoke has a stronger arm but needs to learn the offense better to pass Chug.
Well, that's the key. He needs to learn the offense better to pass Chug, and that's what Ryan Day has repeatedly said this year, and also reminds people that Gunnar Hoke has only been here since the spring.
Yeah,
since
summer. Yeah.
So that's going to take some time, and I'd say next year begins the real race between those two. But yet, no, and as we saw with Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins, you don't really compete for the backup job during the season. That's already won. So it's going to be up to Gunnar Hoke to show and practice through the mental reps that I need more, or this would be a good week, to show how far you've come. But to expect the number 3 guy to become the number 2 guy during the season, it doesn't generally happen unless they show it on the practice field, but they don't usually get an opportunity to do that.
Right. I mean, this is a conversation we had with Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins 2 years ago. Burrow seemed like he was maybe going to be the number 2 guy, broke his hand in practice, and then that was it, because Haskins was ahead of him, and then Haskins just kind of kept being ahead of him, and that was it. So, next one from Barrett777. Are the two number ones, which would be Justin Fields and Jeff Okudah, a better combo than the 2 number 2s, which would be J.K. Dobbins and Chase Young? Has there ever been a year with a better single number combo? I'm going to take the second part of that. I mean, I scanned through a few old rosters, and I didn't come up with anything that's, you're talking about guys who are already either, first round NFL draft pick kind of talent, or, if J.K. Dobbins isn't a first round draft pick, he's working his way up the Ohio State career rushing records and, having a remarkable junior year where those 3 of those 4 guys are at least theoretically somewhere in that Heisman conversation, and Jeff Okudah is probably in the Thorpe Award conversation. Like, I don't know how you do better than that.
Any list where Chase Young is an option for me, I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
this is very difficult. Like Okuda and Fields or Chase Young and J.K. Dobbins. I'm going to have to. Yeah, I got to go with the twos there. And in terms of has there ever been a better combo than those guys? The problem with that is the double digits really only came into vogue in the last 10, 15 years with recruiting when you promise more guys single digits because back before then, you took what you got.
Right, yeah, I went back and looked at like the 1996 roster, 1998 roster, and you just didn't have very many of them. The one that's kind of cheating on this is Chris Campbell, number 7 on offense and number 7 on defense.
But there's another good one in 2002.
There was another good one. This is not offense and defense. Nate Sally, safety. B.J. Sander, the punter, 21. Both wore 21.
I like that one. That's although Nate Sally was just a freshman on that team, right? So he wasn't a huge contributor.
Yeah. But B.J. Sander, I think, didn't he play 2003 as well?
Yeah, that was Andy Groom's year. It was 2002. So, and B.J. Sander won the Ray Guy in 2003. So. And Andy Groom, I'll still say, completely robbed in 2002.
The Andy Groom 2002 story that I like is when he and Mike Nugent were running the option on in the national championship game against Miami. They had that fake field goal, and it was the punter. Goodness, Groom. Thank you. Groom had the ball, and Nugent was kind of basically running to his right, and they were both pretty good athletes. And Sander got tackled.
Groom.
Goodness, I think I'm having a stroke. Probably not. You smell toast? Doesn't matter. It's fine. Groom got tackled, and after the game said, one more block, and I was gone. Yes. And then Nugent's response was, if he'd pitched it, I was gone.
Yeah, of course.
Confidence up to 100 on that one.
Did we do that one?
We have not done that one. I'm leaving this one for you because you will be more qualified to answer this one as a weekly Michigan viewer. Another one from Barrett777 is there a Michigan player that would start for Ohio State this year? Barrett cannot think of any, but you, as a media professional, I'm certain can.
I honestly cannot. I know maybe you might say like Nico Collins at receiver, but Ohio State isn't really in need of that because they have that. You got Austin Mack, you got Benjamin Victor, both as the big body guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's more of a slot receiver than anything else, and sometimes an outside receiver. I mean, they're all good, but they're unproductive, and they don't get used enough to make me think that they would be starting in front of like KJ Hill in the slot. You're not going to start anybody in front of him from Michigan. Offensive line, no. Defensive line, no. Linebacker, no. I mean, there's nobody. The only arguments for me would be the receivers. And I think Ohio State's receivers are just fine as they are. And it's a sad state of affairs when there is nobody on the lines for Michigan or on defense that is even, Lavert Hill would be a discussion, but it's not a long discussion.
Right, yeah. Over whom?
Right. Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, there are some possibilities. There are some people where you can have a conversation, but there's not a clear-cut yes anywhere on that list, which is crazy. Because, I mean, go back to the show we did in the summer, the Tale of the Tape show. We said, Michigan probably starts the year ahead on the offensive line, ahead at quarterback. Already, a month into the season, Ohio State is night and day ahead of them on the offensive line. And that's a function of Ohio State's offensive line being a lot better than we thought, and Michigan's offensive line being a lot worse. And
that's even with two injured right tackles.
Yeah,
I still wouldn't take anybody from Michigan over them.
Yeah, and the same thing at quarterback, where we thought, well, Shea Patterson's going to start the year clearly ahead of Fields, and then maybe Fields at some point that physical talent can make up that gap.
It took until August.
I was going to say week one, I think there was the crown was passed there. So yeah, I don't know that there's a clear cut yes anywhere on that field. Next one from Crabapple Buck. We watched some inept Michigan offenses in the past come to life against us in the game. Do they even have a dead cat bouncing them like Devin Gardner used to have? They look particularly anemic this year. I have a feeling Shea won't be the quarterback when they visit Ann Arbor. What are your thoughts? I mean, Devin Gardner's 2013 game was impressive and also the result of a tremendously crappy Ohio State pass defense.
There's that.
And so, there's a certain amount of, they're gonna save up everything for that game, or they're gonna come out really motivated and maybe, but if you're playing a defense that's extremely good and you're not able to do it, if you're putting up 10 points against Iowa, their defense is fine, but their defense is not one that's in the conversation with Ohio State for best defense in the Big Ten. So you're putting up 10 points against Iowa. You're struggling you're basically getting shut out against Wisconsin until garbage time. So what's the formula? Like, where does this get markedly better? Like, it would involve and probably personnel changes, which, Shea Patterson is the change at quarterback that Buck mentioned. But there's probably also some philosophical offensive stuff, because the speed and space thing has neither been speed nor space. So something will have to change there. That's not just a plug in one person and everything's fixed. Like, there are multiple issues there that you never say never, but there's an explanation for 2013 that I don't think is there for this year.
No, maybe you let Ed Warner call the plays. Sorry, that's a joke. It's a joke.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh.
It has been in the past as well. Just in terms of, like, I always think that there's a chance that a bad Michigan offense can produce against an Ohio State defense, be it good or bad, just because. But it would take that just because. It's wind and ghosts. Yeah. Basically. It's not what's on the field. It's what's swirling around in century-old rivalry.
Right. I mean, this goes back to a phrase we've used before. And then a miracle happens.
Exactly.
Like something comes out of nowhere to...
it happened in 2001, though.
Right. It does. It can happen. But, and if you are old enough to remember the 1990s, it happened a whole lot back then, where you had a lot of 8-3 Michigan teams beating 11-0 Ohio State teams.
And perhaps that's why I will never, say, no, this Michigan offense, which is bad, and should really only score, that might be one of the questions we eventually get to, I don't know, but should only score maybe 17 at most against this defense. I still have seen it too many times in college where, but those are more talented Michigan teams.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it could happen, but you would need about 5 different things to go right or go wrong, depending on which side of the game you're looking at.
You would need the 2007 season in one game, where everything that you needed to happen for Ohio State to happen in 2007, it happens all centrally located for Michigan in Michigan Stadium. Like, just all of these things that shouldn't happen.
Right. And there's a way that the offense has, you could potentially have one key injury on offense that could really change how this offense looks. On defense, there's not one spot where it's like, this is the only guy that they have on this field that can do what this person can do. If Chase Young had to miss the game, for example, they have other defensive ends. They might not be quite as good as Chase Young, but they're pretty darn good. So since the question was specifically about the Michigan offense, that makes it particularly hard for me to sort of see it.
Do you think Shea Patterson will be the quarterback?
I think that they're going to have to make a change at some point, because it feels like the learning curve has kind of flattened out for him.
He's done. You know what he is.
Yeah, he is what he is at this point, and they have goals that are beyond, win 8 games and you've got a stretch coming up. Michigan State, you still have to play Notre Dame, you still have to play Penn State. If they lose 1 or 2 of those games, at that point, your goals for the season are pretty much shot. Especially if you lose a second Big Ten game, because then you're not going to win the division. You're not going to go to Indianapolis. So, at that point, they probably need to shift their focus to 2020 and try something different, because it's just not working.
And Dylan McCaffrey is dealing with a concussion. I'm not sure he's going to play this week. He missed last week after being concussed the week before. It would be good for Michigan to have him play against Illinois this week. To just, if he is going to be the guy, let him get some snaps. Although Illinois, they've got a defensive line who's wrecking. They've got a defensive end who is wrecking people, so I don't know if that's too smart. We are going to take a real quick break and let you know that we are brought to you by the numbers 62, 39, and the following sponsors.
Next one from Mark. Is this going to be Shaun Wade's last year in a Buckeye uniform?
There's a lot of thought process to that beginning in the beginning of the season where we thought he was a safety.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point it was, no, you come back so that you can show the NFL that you can be a corner. Now he's an inside corner, but does he want to show that he can be an outside corner? But the thing is, I don't think anybody doubts that he can be an outside corner.
Yeah.
So then it becomes, well, if you are a first rounder, yes, go, because how much higher are you, like, how much more will your stock climb if you then you show that, yeah, I can do what Damon Arnett can do, I can do what Jeff Okudah can do. Do you go from the 26th pick to the 6th pick? Mm-hmm. And if so, then yeah, that you come back for that. But again, he's just a redshirt sophomore. So he can still get much better and improve his stock. So I don't know what his party is thinking at this point, because he's been playing corner, as it is, the nickel corner. And I think they're still learning what this means for the NFL. And Ryan Day, they talked to all of the players before the season, saying, if you're not a first or second rounder, you shouldn't go. You're hurting yourself. But then if you are a second rounder, you get to your second contract sooner. So, there's a lot of different things to weigh. Sometimes it's better to be, I think we've said on the show before, sometimes it's better to be the first pick of the second round than the last pick of the first round.
Yeah, and for Wade, the answer is still very much up in the air to me, but I would have said 80-20 no about 3 weeks ago, and now I'm probably a little closer to 50-50. So, next one from Buckeye. Tough versus Browning. Who is better for the team, and should they keep sharing snaps?
Tom?
This is one of these things where there are going to be situations where guys are going to be better suited to play against certain teams or certain schemes or certain players than others. Baron Browning we talked about Zach Harrison kind of taking the leap this year. Baron Browning's another guy who's like, okay, now he's good. Baron Browning has been super impressive. There are probably spots where Tough Borland is potentially still a good fit, just depending on what the offense is showing. Maybe that's Wisconsin. I don't know. So that I formation kind of team. I always think back to Tough Borland kind of jumping onto the scene against Army in 2017, because he led the team in tackles as a redshirt freshman, 10 tackles, 12 tackles, something ridiculous like that, because they were running the fullback up the middle. Mm-hmm. That kind of team, yep, that's a Tough Borland game. But there are going to be other teams. If you're facing a spread team, then yeah, I would think that's probably more of a Baron Browning game. So, they have different guys with different skill sets who fit in different spots. There are certainly times when you're better off having Baron Browning on the field in roles and situations that you'd much rather have Baron Browning on the field. But they both have a role on this team, and you've seen Browning kind of taking on more snaps, it feels like, in recent weeks. So the coaches are thinking the coaches are aware of the subtext of the question, and have been playing Browning more. And you've been getting the results out of him that you wanted to see.
I think he's played about maybe 20 or 30 more snaps over the course of the season than Borland. The thing that I feel bad for Tough Borland about is you've got a segment of the fans who only see the bad. They see him get juked or see a pass go over his hands or, tight end catch a pass on him. Did you see how many plays Joe Bocci missed last week?
Yeah.
And he's a first team All Big Ten middle linebacker.
Yep.
That's not an easy job,
right?
And to be a middle linebacker in the Big Ten, and it's not easy for Baron Browning because he had 2 throws completed over him, and he also cost Ohio State a touchdown with an illegal block in the back, if you'll recall, at the end of the game.
That was a really, really, really bad. I know that the
But if
rules
Tuff
guy
had
on
done
TV. I know the rules guy on TV said.
Yeah.
But, oh my goodness!
If Tuff had done it, then I'm sure that segment of the population would have viewed that as that's just a terrible play by Tuff.
Yeah.
But they're both doing well, so don't change the defense when things are. You're getting the best out of both players, but that doesn't mean both players are going to be perfect all the time.
Right. Yeah. And at this point, I think the defensive coaching staff on the 2019 Ohio State team has probably earned the benefit of the doubt that they,
for now,
have some sense that they know what they're doing.
For a seventh game, at least.
Yes. I don't think they're going to get questioned this weekend, so that's something. Next one from Pants McPants is Ben Victor's biggest problem, i.e., he looks like Randy Moss, causing unrealistic expectations from idiot fans like myself.
I think that's part of it, but another part of it is when Urban Meyer says that he's more physically gifted than any receiver he's ever had, and that was at least 2 years ago.
At least. Yeah.
Maybe 3, like as a redshirt freshman, so that would have been 3 years ago. And so then you're like, okay, well, let's see it. And then, there's always one of those bad drops. And I don't know how many drops he's had this season. Is that maybe the second?
Not many.
I mean, that's the first, that's the one we remember is this past week. I only assumed there was another because receivers drop passes. But he is playing so well, in my opinion. And he is a guy who isn't just catching the ball and that's it. He has become a guy who can do stuff after the catch as well, which isn't necessarily something that he looked like he could become. It looked like for a while he's just going to be the red zone guy.
Yeah, the jump ball guy. Exactly.
And he's become a lot more than that. He can move the chains. He's making people miss. And he's hitting his stride right now. But again, there just aren't a lot of passes in this offense right now for almost anybody because they're running the ball so well and they're splitting reps.
Right, yeah. You are running the ball. I mean, literally half of their yardage this season has been on the ground. And then the half of the passing reps are getting split between basically 5 or 6 receivers, plus the tight ends every once in a while, plus the running backs every once in a while. I mean, there's not enough footballs to go around to put up, huge like Larry Fitzgerald numbers because you have more than one good player on this team. So.
And then when you have that one guy, that's great, but then you can also shut that guy down if you want.
Exactly. Next one from Seabus Adam. Was this Michigan State game a good punch-in-the-gut test for this team for future games?
I think we said that after the game where it gave them an idea of how hard they would have to work to beat the better teams. And they certainly came out of that beaten up, but it's the good kind of sore basically. Mm-hmm. And now it just gives them I think it allows them to recalibrate, and not that, but I think they were totally prepared for it as well, which is another thing. It's like, it was a punch in the gut, but they were ready for it and it didn't seem to inflict any kind of pain, and now they'll go on to the next punch in the gut.
It was probably good preparation for the Wisconsin game, where Michigan State's not as good as Wisconsin, at least on offense for sure. But that gets you ready for that type of game where it's not going to be overwhelming that you're getting, brutalized and hit hard and pounded on in the trenches. So that's, for sure from that angle, absolutely. At Burner Count 69, you were just appointed college football czar for the day. You can make one change. What is it?
You go, Tom.
I guess I'll go with an 8-team playoff.
That's what I was
8-team playoff, but with the first round of games on campus sites. For sure. Let's see Alabama come north. Let's see Georgia go play in South Bend. Let's see Alabama go play in State College. Let's see it. Let's see if and the atmosphere. My goodness, the atmosphere of bowl games is sometimes it's great and sometimes it's
look, I love Jerry World. I love that place. But I also love Nebraska,
Yeah.
I would go 8-team playoff, but I would go 5 conference champions, and then 3?
5 conference champions, 1 group of 5 team.
Yeah, the highest group of 5 team, and then two
at large.
At large, and I think that, to me, that's about perfect. And if you can't be happy about that, because what that does then, and I don't really care about an 8-4 Northwestern team making it into the playoffs. It turns an 8-team playoff into basically a 13-team playoff because all of those conference championship games are playoff games.
Yep. And the other thing is every team starts the year with at least a theoretical possibility of being able to make win the championship, which is not something you can say right now. If you win the Mountain West, you have functionally no path to a national championship. If you win the Mountain West and you go undefeated, Boise State's going to make that playoff this year. So then you have, guess what? It's not going to be easy to win 3 games in a row, but you at least have that chance. UCF a couple of years ago has that chance, which they did not get.
And I know people say, well, college football is great because every game matters. And that's not true once you have a loss or two. Then now your next 9 games don't matter. So every game doesn't matter. But with this, I think it would continue to matter for more teams.
Mm-hmm.
And what, people going to stop watching?
Yeah, probably not. Next one from @ChadDBouse. Perhaps the discussion about the Buckeyes' 2-minute drill was at the game Saturday night and thought clock management on the possession right before the half left something to be desired. It's so nitpicky with how great this team is, but would still be interested in your thoughts.
I get so annoyed at fans who nitpick stuff when things are going well for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And you're like, well, what about this? And what about that? I get so tired of that. But I agree with him, Tom. We've talked about we'd rather see more aggression at the end of the half. Mm-hmm. But also when you're leading as you are and if you put up 296 yards of total offense in the second quarter, I can't be like, why not 300?
Yeah.
Why not 340? Mm-hmm. I'm just going to be like, you know what? You've done enough.
It's similar to a conversation we've had about kick returns where you have the ball, you're up 14 points. At Nebraska, they were up, 20 or 31 points or something like that. There's a certain amount of coaching with a big lead that turns every coach into Woody Hayes to some degree, where it's like 3 things can happen here and 2 of them are bad. Like the Indiana game, they sat on the ball right before halftime, if I remember correctly, and it was like they were up 30-10 or something like that, and it was like, well, you could score a touchdown here, and that would be good, but if you turn the ball over, then Indiana can score, and all of a sudden it turns what's really a comfortable lead into a not particularly comfortable lead. And even for Ryan Day, who's an offensive guy, who's a young enough guy that he grew up playing video games and understands some of this stuff, and talks about, understanding the analytics and wanting to use the analytics, and, that's great. The numbers pretty much always say go for it. So that is kind of a clash inside his head, I'm sure, with, 3 things can happen.
It is funny how when you have that lead at the end of the half, it's basically social media. You only see the worst of people on social media. Like, you only see the worst of coaches at that point when they're like, I'd rather just be in the locker room right now.
Next one, @Zalexan. As far as arm talent goes, how does Fields compare to other OSU greats?
Well, Tom, how many OSU greats are there with big arm talent? You've got Dwayne Haskins. I think Torrey Smith was up there, but
all the other NFL greats, such as ... or what about?
And Braxton Miller. I saw him in a high school all-star thing, like quarterback challenge, for a long throw contest. He thumbed it and ended up helicoptering it.
Yeah.
So I've never seen Justin Fields do that. I think it's him and it's Dwayne Haskins in terms of
maybe Cardale Jones.
Oh well, yes. And he's a guy I always forget. He only started 10 games here.
That's true.
So he was here and then he was gone.
Justin Fields only started 6 games. Boom, lawyered. Next one from @Suncard19. Where do you think Brendan White has been? Wasn't this supposed to be a huge year for him? We kind of touched on that earlier.
Yeah, was that the last show we talked about?
That was I think on Tuesday. But yeah, he's there. He's part of the plan. It's just a situational.
Still learning the process, learning the position.
@Stewart_E4 US Vet. What offense do you prefer and why? 2018 versus 2019.
Tom, let's answer this question at the same time in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. 2019. Yeah,
yes.
Of course. You run the ball. That's always the answer.
Easy.
Wait. You want who departs from the draft?
Yeah. With seeing the 6-game sample size, who departs for the draft that still has eligibility left?
Chase Young.
Yes, Chase Young, Jeff Okudah. We talked earlier that Sean Wade's a maybe.
Perhaps. What about, Malik Harrison thought about it last year. Mm-hmm. What about Baron Browning? What about Pete Werner?
Baron Browning is someone who could end up working himself into that role. Malik Harrison's a possibility.
No, he's a senior. But like
yeah. I don't know if I see Pete Werner. But,
I don't. But anytime you're like a junior starter, you're automatically on this list.
Yeah. But yeah,
JK is gone.
Just in terms of measurables, I think Baron Browning has the measurables that he will be the type of, like a little bit like Jerome Baker. Like he's got the speed that will get him a nice NFL deal if he continues to improve and show what he has so far this fall.
Let's go with one more, and then let's call it a show.
All right. Well, we already answered about Zach Harrison, so we'll skip that one. Do you think the success of this year will cause any top-tier recruits to flip this coming signing period? That's also from Suncard 19.
Yeah, I think you're always going to have a flip. I don't know who those guys would be at this point, but there have been a lot of recruits who have been in wait-and-see mode in terms of Ryan Day and seeing what this Ohio State thing would be, because I'm sure they were told by all of the coaches that were recruiting them from other schools, things are going to change. Urban Meyer is gone.
Yeah.
And you don't know what Ohio State is going to be, and it's not going to be what Urban Meyer had. So,
and that has been true.
It is true. Now things are better. They still don't have a slide, but I think recruits have been coming around. But the thing is, there's not a lot of room.
Right. They're already at 23 or 24. I mean, the class is essentially full. You're probably looking at adding. There's a quarterback that we know that they're pursuing, that they may be close to getting, and maybe one more player, maybe add another defensive lineman, something like that. But there are not that many options, and there are guys who they have been linked to, defensive backs in particular. But maybe they add another running back. I mean, there's a couple spots where there's probably like one certain guy, but the class is so full right now that unless you have some people decommit, you're probably not going to have room to add that.
And you wonder, like, if Jalen Knighton, the running back who committed to Florida State over Ohio State, was wanting to come back into the fold, would they have room? Would they make room? Ryan Day said that they don't have room for running backs, but the way JK is playing, they will have room.
That was predicated on whether JK Dobbins is back next year or not.
And spoiler alert. So, all right, that'll do it. We've still got a bunch of other questions that we will eventually find time for. We thank you guys for submitting those, as always, and then we also always thank you for listening. That's not just a line. That's for real. Right, Tom?
What? I'm kidding. Yes, that is for real. We do appreciate you. See what I did there because I wasn't listening? Yeah. No, we do appreciate you listening. We appreciate your ratings and reviews on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice.
Yep, and please continue to do that. Shoot us a DM of a screenshot of your rating and reviewing, and we'll get something good out to you, and we'll hook up with you there. So we thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network with the Buckeye Sloopcast on Mondays and Fridays and the Silver Bullet podcast on Tuesday, and us whenever it hits your inbox, usually Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday, Sunday-ish type of things. And we thank you for listening, and we will talk to you later.